Welcome back to another episode, my lords, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this day is treating you famously. Bob, how's it going your end? You look like you're tuning in from heaven. It's very bright behind you.
No, I'm from my garage, believe it or not.
It's enough. It's the second stop on the way. How's it from a point of behavioural intelligence? Have you seen many intelligent behavioural things?
What, this week?
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, we're in a budget week in the UK, so you could go on forever talking about the behavioural nuances that have been displayed and the people being economical with the truth and their behaviour giving them away a little bit. And it was good to see that they've managed to have a chance to give a speech that had been leaked about an hour before. And so she was actually saying what people already knew. And you could tell by her behaviour that she wasn't happy with that because it spoiled her thunder a little bit. But no, apart from that, it's been a pretty quiet week, actually.
Nice.
What about yourself?
I've been kind of in a cave. I mean, a very modern cave, because it's this setup. I'm building the next intake of a series of classes that I'm doing. So it's a lot of staying inside and seeing very little human behaviour, but more the written or the text and whatnot. And that was the thing that struck me about the notion of intelligence, in that one can hope to gain intelligence, but the intelligent observations that were on display were kind of lacking, especially with the conversations around the budget as well. It was a week of oh dear. Oh, try that again. So, speaking of intelligent designs, we have arguably the silliest word in behavioral science, and a circumplex to deal with for you today. Silly word aside, it has a distinct and direct purpose behind it, coming from the wonderfully insightful Timothy Leary. And in terms of what it is, a lot of these guys that I've seen, and I use that sincerely because I've not seen too many women getting involved in online discussions and I'm so strong because I'm such a man and I have such a strong opinion. God bless them. They could definitely do with this circumplex coming through, which essentially what it is. It's a behavioral map that describes all interpersonal behavior that is focused around primarily two axes. You know, the difference between dominance and submission, and warmth and hostility. Positioning people on the map is really a way to help decode intentions, relational patterns, behavioral drift, as in the change of patterns and where it's going to, where it's coming from. But Bob, I know you've done a lot of work with this particular circumplex, so why don't you tell us about your experience with it? Oh, you're muted, sir. Still muted? There we go.
Oh, okay. I think you can't really look at the circumplex. Where I come to it is Leary himself fascinates me. He went from very straight academic to a bit of a cult figure in the hippie movement of the late 60s. And so a lot of his work gets a little bit dismissed because of that, I think. But the circumplex comes before his hippie stage and his tune in, turn on, drop out thing. And it was, I think, the leader of the interpersonal theory, if you want to call it that, was a guy called Harry Stack Sullivan. And he built on his work. So he isn't the originator as such, but he's certainly someone who put a lot of context to it. And basically, what interpersonal theory sort of posits, if you want to call it that, is it's that personality is better looked at in terms of patterns of interaction, patterns of behaviour when people are together. And that's where he came up with the circumplex. And from the circumplex, he then went on to do a thing called the interpersonal checklist, ICL. And the interpersonal checklist is what a lot of my work is based on. It's based around looking at how you can quantify the behaviour that he puts into that circumplex. Because if you see the original circumplex, it's got 4 axes, as you've said: dominance, submission, warmth, hostility. But actually, it's then divided up a lot more than that. And what came out of it, this checklist, I think had 128 descriptive items on it, which were divided up into 8 parts. And that is what they used. And it is, I believe, and I think this is right, it is the forerunner of everything like the Myers-Briggs, DISC, and all those sort of things. I know for a fact that it was the first sort of iteration of it being used, the checklist, was for the US Army.
Oh, nice.
And they used it for screening purposes. And so that's where it comes from. But it's although it's based around Leary, it's sort of gone forward with the people who believe in the interpersonal theory, and it's come through to the modern day. And I use it, and I'm nothing special, but there are people who are a bit more special than me who use it, like Lawrence Allison credits it in his 2 books, Rapport and Orbit. And it is, for me, a good means of identifying the positions that people take in interactions. So Leary was looking more at identifying personality traits through it. I use it more to I call it the conversational positioning. The positions that people take up in interactions, and the behaviours that you could see that could be attributed, that will give you a clue to what that person wants to be seen as in that interaction. So, but Leary himself is great. And if you want to know about Leary, I really suggest, and anyone who has got any passing interest, a great book called I Have America Surrounded by John Hicks, which is a tale about him in his later incarnation as the hippie guru. And it's a great book. But I mean, you can look at it, and he's not actually cited or involved in that, but you can take it through to this psychological warfare, and the men who the men who stared at goats and all that sort of stuff. Sort of there's a line of connection between what Leary was doing in the 60s and the 70s Vietnam. What was it? The First Earth Battalion, I think they were called.
I couldn't tell you that part. Couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I think it was this very strange thing. I think it was I don't know which president it was authorised it, where they thought they could teach people to kill goats just by looking at them and walk through walls and all that sort of stuff. And it's true. It's not
war animal.
As far as I know, it's all. There's been a film about it, hasn't there? But it is based on a real thing that they did. The American psyops or psychops, whatever they called it.
Yeah.
So he's a very interesting guy, and but this circumplex is core to everything I do, and what a lot of other people who are taking a more bioevolutionary look at human behaviour is probably the go-to person. And I've built a whole program around the circumplexes.
Absolutely. Well, one can't have a productive communication situation without them, pun intended. Check out our Mission Insight, further productive communications insights. But to that end, one of the things that I really like about his work is in connection to Shalom Schwartz, the value structures. He has it's not a circumplex, but he has a way of delivering it in terms of the circle, showing what values support each other, within the circle, in that some degree of stimulation is supported by security values, and in opposition to things like power, you would see more benevolence or universalism. That's one of the things that I liked here, in that Leary, at least to me, wasn't trying to label anyone. He was trying to show that every behavior pulls a counter behavior. It's Newtonian in that way. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, in that dominance tends to, a lot of the time, evoke submission. Warmth tends to evoke warmth. Hostility tends to evoke defensiveness. It can function as a predictive tool in investigations or interpersonal work, but if you think of it along the lines of predictive, there is a tendency to become reliant on the model to do its thinking for you. If you use this as a way to gauge possible insights and variations that are likely to come forward, just because I display dominance doesn't mean categorically somebody's going to be supplicant by default. You don't use it to judge the future of a situation. You're using it more to orient yourself within particular moments. Where are they operating from? Where am I drifting? What dynamic is forming between us? It's like a real-time map of possible rapport, possible conflict, possible influence, those types of things. And I really like that way of thinking, because here is the classic thing that you in particular, but we've mentioned for years, in that behavior is not binary. As most of our famed body language experts will suggest, that because they have seen one thing, it means by default something else. When Leary, at least many of the ideas that I found through the circumplex, were suggesting, because you have seen this, it indicates this possible list of variations, or this open end of whatever connected spectrum it is to go through. It's neither good doesn't give way to bad by default, strong doesn't give way to weak by default. Behavior sits in regions that bleed over into one another. Would that be about right?
Yeah, I think so, because I think if you are really focused on conversations themselves, I think another one of my heroes talks about Desmond Morris, that is in Man Watching, I think it is, talks about an interaction as a series of events, and during those events there'll be actions. Now, you could have that someone comes into the conversation from a very dominant position, but during that conversation, things will happen where they may become more comfortable and they relax a little bit, and the conversation will change. And so when I work with people, and I've been doing an elite course, I'm doing the write-ups for it now, I say to people that to be truly great at behaviour, or having behavioural intelligence, as I call it, you have to be a bit of a conversational chameleon. You have to sense when that person is moving, and you move with them. And because let's be honest, there are people who are just outright dominant, and that's what they are. It's an ego thing, but most people may try to be dominant to start a conversation because they just want to lay their stake in the ground for it. That doesn't mean that's how they're going to be. And I think that's the difference between using a circumplex and just saying, well, this person's there and that's where they're going to stay. Because people will move. And in fact, you align with that behavior, because why wouldn't you? Because if that's the main thing that I think people don't always get, is that you don't, you may know that that person is not how they're presenting themselves, but how they're presenting themselves is how they want to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because people just want to be seen and heard, align with that, and then you can see the change when it happens.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get confused because, well, this isn't the person I spoke to on the phone or whatever, then you're going to be in conflict before you even start.
100%. 100%. It's like just because you've made a couple of observations, however insightful or direct or not, doesn't mean that that is the sum total of the individual that you're speaking to. You know,
Yeah.
everyone this capacity for change, just because we have these conversations in the same setting each time, does not mean that people listening can expect the same behaviors and, you know,
Yeah.
the same mood shifts or behavioral drifts or whatever it is that you want to think of it in those observations of us, right? This
Yeah.
may have been arguably his biggest contribution, that the idea that that interpersonal behavior predicts an opposite. You know, an overly dominant person pulls others into either passive compliance or covert resistance. You know, warm
Yeah.
behavior encourages warmth in return a lot of the times, but is it authentic? It's
Yes.
it's essentially gold for an investigator, in that
Yeah.
you have more of an inkling towards identifying possible manipulation, possible pressures, possible influence patterns that are all on this person that you're talking to, looking to observe the changes in the response from, not just cause and effect and the action. It's rarely as simple as that. You know, the circumplex itself, and I've been thinking about it a lot from the investigations angle this week, because of EIC, the clarity code, and things like this that are coming from Integris based on your work. Is there is insights to be made for a certain observation around where an individual sits on the circumplex. So when you're about to interview them, for whatever reason, whether it be an interrogation, a job interview, or anything that exists in between, there is more of an insight as to where the individual could become more submissive, where hostility may appear masked as a politeness, you know, where dominance shifts because power has moved. You
Yeah.
you are able to almost deliberately shift your own behavior around the
Yeah.
circle to either support the nurtured nature of the person-centered situation that you're in, or disarm resistance if it shows, to reduce threat responses, and then encourage the openness that is connected on the backside of it. One of the things that strikes me most, I mean, it's particular to behavioral intelligence, but if we may widen it to the
Yeah.
understanding of human behavior en masse, is that if I've observed, you know, person X, whomever that is, to be dominant, right? Keep it simple. They are dominant. That doesn't mean that in that situation they are solely dominant. There is an oppositional that is connecting to it, in the sense that happiness can't exist without its opposite, because there's nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
So dominance is only as observable because of their own opinions about the supplication in that particular situation, and this gives you insight as to how to interact with it when you think of it more as a spectrum, right? Are they
Yeah.
are they over here all the way dominant, or are they pretty dominant? You know, so these are the insight points that the circumplex itself has a tendency to reveal. There's lots of toing and froing and giving and taking, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100% right. I mean, it's no coincidence that Lawrence Allison, who has adopted the Leary Circumplex and adapted it for his work, has written two books. One, Orbit, which is for law enforcement,
Right.
particularly terrorist investigations, and Rapport, which is for general use. And
Mm,
so he's he's covered both bases.
Mm.
And it does cover both because, especially during interviews, I think it's important that the other person feels seen and heard in it.
Mm.
Now,
Massively.
people in situations will try and put on a behaviour, a persona, if you want. And I think it's really important that no matter what the investigator may think about that, the genuine, whether it's genuine, whether it's authentic, is to go with it because that's how that person wants to be seen.
Yeah.
But I would take that outside of that, of the interview setting, into the business meeting, into negotiations. Everyone is putting on a front. Everyone is wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And if you want to get behind the mask, you have to acknowledge the mask to start with, because that is your access point, is to align with that person's mask that they're wearing. So if
Mm.
there's a dominant mask, if you go for that, and in my world, I call that a controller.
Yeah.
Someone wants to be in control and feel that that they've got some grip in the conversation, which in investigative interviews they don't really, because they're in a room blacked out, no windows usually. Well, in my experience,
Yeah.
and they've had their liberty taken away from them, and they feel very vulnerable. So that show of an element of control is very hard to achieve. But if you let them have that control, that's the main reason, the rationale behind saying, well, tell me your version of this.
Yeah.
Explain to me in your own words. I've got an open mind. Tell me,
Mm. Mm.
and then just listen to them, because that allows them that control. And
Yeah.
then, during that conversation, it may soften, and you can then come in as a collaborator, and you can lead them where you want to go.
Massively. Massively. I mean, it's like the similar thing with, if I use the ambiguous term leaders, whether that be leaders of industry, teams, families, whatever, leaders, right? There's and again, only in my experience, it's been that they very often get stuck in one quadrant, which is usually either dominance warmth or dominance hostility, right? So these situations are well, they can function as a requirement for us to go, hey, there are more areas, there is more behavioral flexibility within the circumplex and how we put it together and how it connects towards your life, whether it be for EP investigations, corporate conflict, whatever else. As a profiling measure, it's a map of who is looking to dominate. So if you take that opposition away, it's who shies away from it by default. Like if I know what makes you happy, by default, I have an idea as to what makes you sad, because I can take away what makes you happy, right?
Sure.
So it's who placates, who avoids, who compensates with pseudo warmth, patterns of triangulation, of power hoarding, of conflict avoidance. They're all visible just within each dynamic, and especially with some of the add-ons with the leader elements and the controller elements that you've added. Excuse me, it's vital. Again, only an opinion, but it has been vital in using it for diagnosing culture problems, whether it be a workplace culture, family culture, and anything that exists in between that will very often create bottlenecks or problems that people keep coming back to. There's this misconception within the simplicity of behavior that treating warmth good, dominance bad. Leary's axis is energetic. It's not moral. Each quadrant has its strengths and its weaknesses. In that, like if you think about the freeze, fight, or flight, people very often misattribute fight to be this kind of fight or argument or confrontation, that type of thing, which is very often a maladaptive approach. There are adaptive approaches to that same thing. That the power is in using the model to see what the person or the people to see what they're trying to achieve, not whether the behavior is good or bad. You know, there's not enough granularity in
Yeah.
in those kinds of assessments that are really needed with behavior. And you can put yourself on there. You know, where am I in
Yeah.
this boundary? Is this behavior, whatever I'm doing, is it serving me in my role doing XYZ, whatever it is? Am I evoking the reaction I actually want? It's a compass almost for self-regulation, for emotional intelligence, for situational awareness. It's a wonderful thing. So to that end, sir, if we were going to go down the final lines, again, final thoughts for the good folks on the circumplex.
Well, I think anyone who's serious about wanting to know about people should at least look up Timothy Leary, look at the circumplex, look at how it's been used, and also understand that all of these things are just models that add clarity to certain aspects. They do not replace the human to human interaction and, reading people in that situation. They help you do that, and they help quantify what you're seeing and how to navigate it, but they're not the holy grail. They are just a model that helps you do that. And the other thing is, always remember that you have got very little chance of reading other people if you don't know yourself. And so that's the main reason that going on courses, and why courses that just teach you what to look for are not going to work. Because we all know, if we are informed, that other people's behaviour is a mirror of some of our own behaviour back to us. And so if you don't know your own behaviour, how can you even contemplate understanding other people?
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm almost loath to add anything on because that's such a salient point. But the one thing I do want to say, and it's kind of connected to that, is this law of opposition. In that, if you have a particular observation about someone, and it's not capable of questions about possible holes or contradicting opinions or whatever it is, the attachment to that is revealed to be about you in that situation, in this simplicity of being given answers. Humans do not function like equations. You can't put the same information and get the same outcome every time. It doesn't work that way. So just consider this oppositional effect right the way through in terms of the behaviors that you see and the behaviors of yourself. So to that end, with the oppositional effect in mind, don't subscribe to the podcast further. Hey, see what I did? Oppositional, love it. An obvious little dad joke reference there. If everyone will forgive me, it's been a long day on the computer. So as with all things, if you are a member of the Facebook group, you're able to join in with these streams live and get your questions in live. And if not, then what are you doing with your life? Come on, let's have some fun. Let's talk about behavioral intelligence together. And until such time as we see you again, have a good one, folks. We'll see you again soon.
Bye.